She was folding his favorite shirt when he said it. 5 words that would destroy 8 years in seconds. I'm just not interested anymore. No anger in his voice. No regret. Just a flat, almost bored tone, like he was discussing the weather. Her hands froze mid-fold. The fabric slipped through her fingers. And then came the part that made her knees weak. I've met someone else. She makes me feel alive. In that moment, standing in their bedroom surrounded by the life they'd built together, Sarah felt something inside her crack open. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the beginning of a quiet destruction that would force her to question everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and her own worth. Who was this woman? How long had this been happening under her nose? Was this really about love, or was something darker driving the man she'd trusted with everything? As Michael continued talking, almost casually, as if he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, another sentence slipped out that would haunt Sarah for months. You don't dress sexy anymore. You stopped trying. The words hung in the air like poison. Was she really the problem? Had she failed somehow? Or was this something else entirely? Something crueler, more selfish, more unforgivable? Hello, friends. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Canada? The United States? United Kingdom? Or Jamaica? We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 3 years earlier, Sarah's life looked completely different. She was 32, working as a teacher at Riverside Elementary, and married to Michael, a software engineer who worked long hours but always made time for Sunday morning pancakes. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable. They had a small 2-bedroom house with a garden Sarah tended every weekend, planting tomatoes and sunflowers that stretched toward the sky. She remembered their wedding day, how Michael had cried during his vows, how his hands shook when he slipped the ring on her finger. He'd promised her forever that day. She believed him. Their early years were filled with the kind of ordinary magic that builds a life. Late-night conversations about dreams. Trips to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. Arguments about whose turn it was to do the dishes that always ended in laughter. Sarah was the kind of woman who showed love through action. She packed Michael's lunch every morning, left little notes in his briefcase, remembered every important date. She supported his career moves, even when they meant longer hours and less time together. She was devoted, loyal, steady. She thought that's what marriage was supposed to be. She remembered one specific moment from their 5th anniversary. They were sitting on their back porch, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. Michael had turned to her and said, "I can't imagine doing life with anyone else." She'd felt so safe in that moment, so certain. How could she have known that 3 years later, those same lips would tell her she wasn't enough? Sarah wasn't flashy. She preferred comfort over glamour, substance over surface. She wore jeans and sweaters most days, kept her hair simple, favored natural makeup. She was beautiful in an understated way, warm brown eyes, genuine smile, the kind of presence that made people feel comfortable. But somewhere along the way, Michael stopped seeing her. Or maybe he never really saw her at all. The first crack appeared about 6 months before the confession. Michael started working later. Much later. "Big project," he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. "Don't wait up." Sarah noticed other changes too. He started dressing differently. Newer clothes, cologne she didn't recognize, a sudden interest in the gym after years of avoiding exercise. She asked him about it once. "Just trying to take better care of myself," he'd said with a shrug. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? When you trust someone completely, you don't go looking for betrayal. But the distance grew. He stopped reaching for her hand during movies. Stopped asking about her day. Their conversations became transactional. Bills, groceries, whose turn it was to call the plumber. The intimacy didn't disappear all at once. It faded gradually, like a sunset you don't notice until you're standing in darkness. Sarah tried to bridge the gap. She'd suggest date nights, only to have him cancel last minute. She'd cook his favorite meals, watch them go cold as he texted someone she couldn't see. She'd lie awake at night, listening to him scroll through his phone in the dark, the blue light illuminating his face as he smiled at a screen that wasn't her. One evening, about 3 months before everything exploded, Sarah found a receipt in Michael's jacket pocket. Dinner for 2 at an expensive Italian restaurant downtown, a place they'd never been together. When she asked him about it, his explanation came too quickly. Client dinner. Boring work stuff. But something in his eyes shifted. Something she'd never seen before. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. She wanted to push, to demand the truth. But fear held her back. Fear of what she might find. Fear of disrupting the fragile peace they still had. So she stayed quiet, swallowing her suspicions like bitter medicine. What would you have done in that moment? Would you have confronted him, or would you have waited, hoping your instincts were wrong? The night it all came crashing down started like any other. Sarah was doing laundry, sorting through Michael's work shirts, when he walked into the bedroom with a look she'd never seen before. Resolved, almost relieved. "We need to talk," he said, for words that drained the color from any room. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her heart already racing. That's when he said it. "I'm just not interested anymore." The words hit her like physical blows. Not interested. As if 8 years of marriage were a hobby he'd grown bored with. As if she were a TV show he'd decided to stop watching. "What do you mean?" Her voice sounded small, unfamiliar. "I mean, I don't feel the same way about you. I haven't for a while." He was standing across the room, arms crossed, like he was protecting himself from her pain. "There's someone else." The room tilted. Sarah gripped the bedspread to steady herself. "Someone else? Who? How long?" "Her name doesn't matter. We met at work about 6 months ago. She's different. She excites me." Different. The word cut deeper than any confession of love could have. Different how? Sarah wanted to scream, but her throat had closed up, trapping all her questions inside. Then came the part that would replay in her mind for months afterward. "You don't dress sexy anymore. You stopped trying. You got comfortable, and I can't be attracted to comfortable." Each word was a knife. Not because they were true, but because they revealed how he'd been judging her, measuring her, finding her insufficient. Sarah thought about all the years she'd spent being a partner, supporting his dreams, building a home, creating stability. And this is what it meant to him, that she'd gotten comfortable? "So you're leaving me because I don't dress sexy enough?" Her voice cracked. "Because I'm not exciting? It's more than that. She makes me feel alive. Young. Like I'm living instead of just existing. Living. As if their entire marriage had been death. As if every sacrifice she'd made, every moment of devotion, had been worthless." "How long have you been seeing her?" Sarah finally managed to ask. 6 months. Maybe 7. 7 months. While she'd been packing his lunches and asking about his day, and trying to figure out why he seemed distant, he'd been building a whole other life. With someone else. "Do you love her?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He hesitated. Just for a second. "I think so. Yeah, I think I do. If you're still watching, drop a comment with 'I'm still here' so we know who's riding this case out with us." The days after the confession were the hardest of Sarah's life. Michael moved out within a week, taking half their furniture and most of her peace of mind with him. The house felt cavernous without him. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where they'd danced to old songs. The couch where they'd planned their future. The bedroom where he'd told her she wasn't enough. Sarah couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She'd lie awake at 3 in the morning, replaying every moment of their marriage, searching for the exact point where she'd failed. Was it when she stopped wearing makeup to bed? When she chose comfort over style? When she stopped being whatever version of herself had first attracted him? She started looking at herself differently, standing in front of the mirror, criticizing every line, every pound, every sign of aging. She was 35, not old, but not 22 either. Was that her crime? Getting older? Being human? Her friends tried to help. "He's an idiot," her best friend Jessica told her over coffee. "This isn't about you. It's about him having some pathetic midlife crisis." But the words bounced off Sarah like rain on glass. Because part of her wondered if Jessica was just being kind. Part of her wondered if Michael was right. Sarah did something she'd never done before. She tried to change. Not for herself, but to prove something. To prove she could be exciting. Sexy. Worth staying for. She bought new clothes. Tight dresses. High heels that hurt her feet. She started wearing makeup every day, even to the grocery store. She joined a gym and pushed herself through workouts she hated, all while imagining Michael seeing her transformation and realizing his mistake. But he didn't see. He didn't care. He was too busy with her. The woman who was different. Who was exciting. Who hadn't made the terrible mistake of building a life with him. 3 months after the separation, Sarah ran into them at a coffee shop downtown. She saw them before they saw her. Michael was laughing at something the woman said, his hand on her lower back, that same look in his eyes he used to have for Sarah a lifetime ago. The woman was younger. maybe 28. Pretty in a polished way. Everything Sarah had been trying to become. Sarah left before they could notice her, her coffee untouched, her hands shaking so badly she could barely drive home. That night, she cried harder than she had since the confession. Not because she wanted Michael back, but because she'd lost herself trying to become someone she wasn't. If this story feels painfully real, comment where you're watching from. Have you ever felt like you weren't enough for someone you loved? For months into the separation, Sarah's sister Emily came to visit. Emily had always been the stronger one, the one who spoke her mind and took no nonsense from anyone. She took one look at Sarah's new wardrobe, her excessive makeup, her forced smile, and said the words Sarah needed to hear. "What the hell are you doing?" Sarah tried to brush it off. "I'm just trying to improve myself." Improve yourself? For who? For him? The man who threw away 8 years because you weren't exotic enough for his fragile ego. Emily sat Sarah down and told her a truth she'd been avoiding. You were never the problem. You were loyal, devoted, real, and he traded that for someone who makes him feel like he's in a movie. That's not your failure. That's his. The words cracked something open in Sarah. She started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. In their sessions, Sarah began to untangle the web of self-blame she'd been trapped in. "You're grieving," Dr. Martinez told her. "Not just the marriage, but the person you thought he was. That's a valid loss." Through therapy, Sarah learned something crucial. Michael's betrayal wasn't about her lacking something. It was about him chasing a feeling, a fantasy, an escape from the ordinary reality of commitment. Some people, Dr. Martinez explained, mistake comfort for boredom. They confuse stability with death. They need constant stimulation, constant novelty, because they never learned that real love isn't about excitement. It's about choosing someone every single day, even when they're not exciting. Sarah started to understand. Michael didn't leave because she wasn't sexy enough. He left because he was incapable of appreciating what real partnership looked like. 6 months after the separation, Sarah heard something through a mutual friend. Something that changed everything she thought she understood about the betrayal. Michael and his new girlfriend had broken up. It lasted less than 9 months. The reason? According to their friend David, who still talked to Michael occasionally, the excitement had worn off. The novelty had faded. And when it did, Michael found himself in a relationship with someone he barely knew. Someone who, it turned out, wasn't looking for forever, just fun. "He called me last week," David told Sarah over lunch. He sounded lost. He said he made a mistake, that he didn't realize what he had until it was gone. Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly. Not vindication. Something more complicated. "Did he ask about me?" she heard herself say. "He did. He wanted to know if you'd moved on. If you were seeing anyone." Sarah thought about that moment. 6 months ago, she would have clung to those words like a lifeline. She would have wondered if there was a chance to fix things, to go back. But now she saw the truth clearly. Michael hadn't learned anything. He wasn't calling because he'd grown or changed or suddenly understood the value of real love. He was calling because his fantasy had collapsed and he wanted to retreat back to safety. Back to the woman who'd always been there, who'd always forgiven him, who'd always made things comfortable. "What did you tell him?" Sarah asked. David smiled. "I told him you were doing great, that you seemed happier than you'd been in years. I don't know if that's true, but I wanted it to be." Sarah realized something profound in that moment. It was true. She was doing better. Not because she'd changed her appearance or found someone new or gotten revenge, but because she'd stopped trying to be enough for someone who would never be satisfied. The revelation continued to unfold over the following weeks. Through other friends, Sarah learned more about Michael's relationship. How he'd idealized this woman, built her up in his mind as everything Sarah wasn't. How reality had disappointed him when she turned out to be human too. With flaws, with bad days, with her own needs and expectations. The woman wasn't the villain Sarah had imagined. She was just another person caught in Michael's inability to commit to reality. What would you do if your ex realized they'd made a mistake? Would you take them back, or would you choose yourself? 8 months after that night in the bedroom, Sarah made a decision. Michael had started reaching out. Text messages that came late at night. "I miss you. I was wrong. Can we talk?" For weeks, she ignored them. Then one evening, she decided to respond. Not because she wanted him back, but because she needed closure. They met at a neutral coffee shop. Michael looked different. Tired. older somehow. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. His voice carried a humility she'd never heard before. Sarah didn't make it easy for him. "Why did you want to see me?" "I wanted to apologize. Really apologize. Not just say the words, but tell you I understand now what I threw away." Sarah listened as he explained his regret. How he'd chased a feeling instead of appreciating what was real. How he'd blamed her for his own emptiness. How he'd realized too late that excitement fades, but partnership endures. When he finished, there was hope in his eyes. Hope that she might forgive him. Take him back. Give him another chance. Sarah took a deep breath. "I appreciate the apology. I do. But I need you to understand something. What you didn't just hurt me. It changed me. You made me question my worth. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. And it took me months to realize that the problem was never me. It was you. Your inability to appreciate what you had. Your need for constant validation. Your selfishness." Michael started to speak, but Sarah held up her hand. "I'm not done. You didn't just betray our marriage. You betrayed 8 years of trust, of partnership, of me showing up every single day. And you threw it away because I wasn't exciting enough? Because I chose comfort over performance? That says everything about you and nothing about me." She paused, feeling the power in her own words. "I don't hate you, but I don't want you back. I deserve someone who doesn't need me to be a fantasy, who appreciates stability, who understands that real love isn't about constant excitement. It's about choosing each other when things get ordinary, when things get hard, when things get comfortable." Michael's face fell. "So there's no chance?" "No, there's not. And honestly, I'm grateful this happened, because it forced me to see my own worth, to stop shrinking myself, to understand that I deserve better than someone who sees commitment as boredom." Sarah stood up, leaving money for her coffee on the table. "I hope you find what you're looking for. But more than that, I hope you learn that people aren't disposable, that relationships require work, that excitement is easy but love is a choice." She walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than she had in months. Not because she'd gotten revenge or made him hurt, but because she'd chosen herself. Completely. Finally. Without apology. 1 year after the confession, Sarah's life looked completely different again. She'd stopped trying to be someone she wasn't. She wore what made her comfortable. She focused on her teaching, her friendships, her own growth. She started painting again, something she'd loved in college but had abandoned somewhere in the midst of marriage and responsibility. She traveled to places she'd always wanted to see. She had coffee with friends without checking her phone every 5 minutes. She learned to be alone without being lonely. And somewhere in that journey, she met someone. Not because she was looking, not because she'd transformed into some exciting new version of herself, but because she'd become whole on her own. His name was Thomas. He was a librarian with kind eyes and a quiet sense of humor. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours. He asked about her life, her passions, her dreams. He listened like her words mattered. When she told him, months into their relationship, about what had happened with Michael, Thomas said something that made her cry. "I don't understand men who need constant excitement. I think there's something incredibly beautiful about building a life with someone, about knowing them so well that you can predict their coffee order, about being comfortable enough to exist together in silence. That's not boring. That's intimacy." Sarah realized in that moment how much she'd healed, how far she'd come from the woman who'd stood in her bedroom, broken and confused, wondering what was wrong with her. Nothing had been wrong with her. She'd just been loving someone who didn't know how to love her back. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the journey from self-blame to self-worth. It's about understanding that when someone can't appreciate you, the problem isn't your value. It's their vision. What would you have done in Sarah's place? Could you have walked away from someone who came back apologizing? Could you have chosen yourself over the comfort of what was familiar? If this story touched something in you, if you've ever questioned your worth because someone couldn't see it, I want you to know something. You are not defined by someone else's inability to appreciate you. Love isn't about excitement or performance. It's about showing up, about choosing each other, about seeing value in the ordinary moments that build a life. Comment below and tell us. Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone who didn't choose you? What would you have said to Michael in that coffee shop? And if you found value in this story, if it made you think or feel or reflect, subscribe to this channel. We share real stories about real people facing real challenges. Stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. Stories that help us see our own strength. Thank you for watching. And remember, Being comfortable isn't a flaw. It's a gift. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise.